Since we wrote Strategy Tactics, we've been running some interesting events where we invite people from the PipDex community to ask questions about strategy tactics, ask questions about specific tactics, get help with situations that they're in the middle of. And we had one recently that really stuck out to me where someone was in a situation where they had to deliver bad news to a high-level executive, and the way that executive responds to that kind of bad news isn't so great. Do you remember the details on that?
Yeah, the person, their whole role was just to get the data, to understand the analytics. Yep. And they would then bring the analytics to the executive, it was the CEO, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And the CEO would say, great, what are you going to do about it now? And the person was like, well, what do you mean? I'm going to keep recording analytics is what I'm going to keep doing. Well, they didn't say that. It was more kind of like, well, what can I do? I'm a data analyst, and this wasn't at all a case of that's not my job. It's more of a case of you're just asking completely the wrong person to solve the problem.
Yeah, and it smelled like one of those situations where it was a mismatch of responsibility and authority. Mm-hmm. The weird thing is it felt like the executive was asking this person to manage their emotions.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't, the weird thing is, well, it's not weird. It's actually really common. The executive wasn't saying like, here's some power, go fix it. It was more like, you have no power. You can't do go fix it. Because the person obviously didn't feel like they had any power or any say in the situation. Yeah. It was kind of like, hey, given that I can't do anything about this and I'm told I have to solve the entire thing, what can I do? And that really sucks. It's a completely unfair position to be put in, but it's really common. Yeah. It's, I think you've said it so many times, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you approach an executive with a problem that you cannot solve, and this situation was more of a reporting, but I think this happens pretty commonly, is, you'll go and say, hey, look, here's a situation that's above my reach or outside of my reach. You're the executive, you're the manager, you're whatever. You're in a position where this is within your reach. I need help. I'm telling you this because it's beyond what I'm capable of doing. And if CEO is in your job description and you're saying this is beyond what I'm capable of doing, then that's not good. But if your job is data analyst and you say, I can't change the product pipeline, or I can't change the product roadmap goals, that's not within your job description. In fact, if you tried to, there's a whole lot of people who are responsible for that would be really upset if you just started changing things, even if you were able to.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's more about emotionally managing an executive than it is about actually solving a problem. Mm-hmm. It's like the executive is like, well, what are we going to do? And that comes across probably differently. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I still think that's inappropriate. We expect more of leaders. In my view of this, a leader's job is to make more leaders. Mm-hmm. So if someone comes to you as a leader and says, I don't have the tools to fix this problem, and you seem to be expecting me to do that, your job as a leader is then to equip them by whatever means necessary. And if you can't do that, that's on you.
That also kind of pops in my head is the fact that the CEO doesn't know the right person to ask to fix the problem.
Yeah, they don't understand their own capabilities in the organization.
Wow.
Yeah.
At the very least, you would expect them to say, you're the data analyst. Good job analyzing the data. I'm going to call the project manager or product owner or whatever it is in the company you're in and ask them, hey, there's this problem with the product that you're owning. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? That's still not a great attitude of just what are you going to do? Something's messed up. It's all your fault. But at least it's closer to the person who can actually affect change and can actually have more understanding of what needs to happen.
Yeah, at the very least, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Mm-hmm. That's where it could have stopped. And it would have been a great story. There's the pure theory version of these kinds of problems, empowerment, how to help people figure out how to manage up. And I think the problems themselves as they manifest in the real world are much more messy, much more complicated. Mm-hmm. And there's often social and political pressure. There's power pressure, right? what are you going to do about it? It's like the fingers pointing down, and that's gross.
Yeah.
And yet you're still in that situation. You have to figure out what to do. So, I mean, what would you do if you were this person in this situation besides quit and do something better?
Yeah. So
work with better people.
So just because you're working with an asshole doesn't mean you can quit because you have the moral high ground. Otherwise, everyone in the world would be quitting their jobs tomorrow. And it's also not a situation where it's like one weird trick to completely flip the power dynamic. Like, just use this framework and your boss will be doing everything you tell them today. That doesn't exist either, but there are things that you can do, that you can try on scales of extreme risk to yourself and your employment to very small amounts of risk.
And everywhere in between.
Yeah.
I think one of the most powerful responses, even if you're not empowered to respond effectively, is take responsibility from strategy tactics. And to be very clear, this is not take responsibility by doing what your boss tells you to do. It's a different way of viewing the situation that says, okay, you're in this problematic situation. There are a range of responses that people seem to take in these situations, ranging from blaming others to doing it yourself. Like, I'll do it myself, all me. And we think those extremes are problematic for various reasons, and we propose a different way of viewing the situation.
Yeah, and I think in some respects you might say, well, that's really obvious. Like, of course it shouldn't be like one or the other of the extremes. However, part of the reason that we made the card was this is something we see almost everywhere in every power dynamic. It definitely takes more than one person to fix this. But I think one of the powerful things about this card is, yeah, there are a lot of people that are in this situation that say, yeah, I'm in a situation that kind of sucks. I realize that. But there's also a lot of people in that situation that say, here I am. There's this thing that's going on. This really sucks. This is really hard for me. And I don't know what to do. And just even having the realization of like, hey, this isn't the way it's supposed to be, can start leading people to different ways to approach the problem. I don't know about you. I've been in this kind of a situation many times where like I've gotten to a point where I feel like it's my fault that I can't fix this situation. I've tried everything. And even just to have that like moment where you just snap out of it like, oh, whoa, I'm not the problem. I might not be the solution. I might not be able to solve my boss not doing their job or leading well, but at least I know it's not me. And that kind of, it points me out of like a way out of that like circle, that roundabout. So at least I can start doing something a little bit different. In this case, so the analytics didn't look good. So like this person probably isn't going to directly affect the analytics changing to look good. That's not the problem they need to solve. Right. They need to solve the executive wants something that's unrealistic and I'm being held accountable for that. That's the problem. So that's maybe an easier problem to try to solve than just how do I fix bad analytics? Or it's more like the analytics aren't bad. It's what's happening is bad and the analytics are just showing that. But it's that one step in a different direction. In this situation specifically, like who is responsible for making the changes and have you talked to them and what kind of conversations can you have and how could that work?
I think the question of like who is responsible is key to this, not because we want to assign the blame to someone, but because we want to take it from a me or a you problem and turn it into a we problem. So like in the card, we have this nice little spectrum. It's like, who's responsible? No one. So can't be helped. It is what it is. Me, which is like, oh, I have so much control in this situation. It's all on me. And then on the other side of the things, like, oh, blame someone else. Like, oh, the executive is just a jerk and there's nothing that can be done about this.
Or the employee is incompetent and they just can't fix anything.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
We want to propose something different. And if you're in that situation with an executive or someone in leadership or management who's like, fix it, and they're not engaging, it's not about whose job it is. Yeah. We want to see a shift from what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? To what are we going to do about it? And so I think the move here is to work indirectly, right? regardless of the interpersonal power, weird social dynamics, the political dynamics. If you're in that situation, one of the best moves you can make is switching from me mode to we mode and go find other people to join your coalition of people trying to figure this out so that you're not alone, so that you're not stuck being the sole person whose job it is to fix all this. Because that's just, it's silly. Like, there's no way that you can take that level of responsibility. But we can, together. And so the question I have is, who else has something to say about this? Who else has something to do about this? And can we get into the same room and say, hey, the number isn't what we're expecting. And here's the key question: what must be done? Not what should I do, what must be done? And I think that requires gathering people together.
Yeah, I agree. It's people, not person, because there's a good chance that no one else even knows this is happening, especially if the executive thinks you're the one that needs to be solving this. It tells me that the people that should be included aren't, and there's a good chance they don't even know that the situation is happening. Because if they did, they probably would be coming to you to ask questions. And so it might be, if you're doing the analytics part of stuff, you make other people aware. There's, you never know how people are going to respond, but like ideally someone would say, oh, wow, that like really impacts the work I'm doing and like could be very bad for me if it continues this way, or bad for all of us. Okay, well, here's what I can do. Here's what I'm going to try. This also affects this other group or this other team or whoever. Like, let's talk to them, let them know like what we're going to do over here. And hey, I know you typically report on this stuff. Maybe it's once a month or whatever it is. Is there any way you could just send us an email at the end of the week? Send us some information if it spikes in a certain direction that's like an important number for you, whatever. But just like let us know what's happening so we know when things get to places that are concerning.
Yeah. Distribute that information so that it's not this surprise moment. And yeah, you're totally right. If the executive was surprised by that information, I bet everyone else in the room was also, interesting. So creating that social network, working together and saying what must be done now that we know this information. And one of the other cards from strategy tactics that I think is really good for this is the back brief card. Mm-hmm. Just as a group, this is what I intend to do. Here's why. And here's the support that I'm going to need from the rest of you. And just creating that feedback loop of intent and rationale and involving other people. Hey, help. Gives everyone a chance to be like, hey, that's not going to work because of this, this, or this. Let me help you with that. And it changes the dynamic.
Yeah, and I think so, like, there's those moments of, hey, this isn't going to work, but I just want to be clear for both of us, that's not a, we tried this before, it's not going to work kind of cynicism. It's more like, hey, you're missing a key piece of information, let us help you make it better.
Yes.
It's a yes and rather than a nope.
And when you start doing things like this, you will always find that there are new obstacles that pop up. Mm-hmm. And like one of the things you can do is pay attention to whether or not the problems that you're experiencing are changing. Because it's one thing to be stuck in the same old dynamic. It's another thing to be active, to be trying new things. And if you're trying new things, you're going to have new problems. And I think that's super important to notice. Like that's a sign of progress. So just wrapping this up, you've heard us talk about some of the tactics in strategy tactics. If you don't have your own copy, you can get 10% off with our link. It's getstrategytactics.com. And we would love for you to talk to us about the tactics that you're trying. Send us your problems, situations, questions. You can either comment or you can email us. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to hear more of this, let us know. And with that, any final words, David?
Come on. The final words. Final words, you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we look forward to hearing from you more in the future.